Hello, it's my pleasure to welcome Congresswoman Cathy McMorris Rodgers, who is the lead Republican on the House Committee on Energy. So thank you so much for joining us at the Policy Circle Summit on the confluence of essentials, water, power, and leadership. So welcome, Congresswoman. I want to start our conversation with the first question. If you could just give us some background on what is the role of Congress as it relates to power generation, transmission, distribution, and utility in general. If you could start off with that, that would be great.
Yes. Well, it's great to be with you, Sylvie, and the Policy Circle. I appreciate the work that you're doing and the focus on energy. And when it comes to the role of Congress, as I see it, Congress has an important role to make sure that energy is affordable, that it is reliable for American families and businesses, and that includes electricity. So whether it's power generation, transmission, distribution, we get involved, whether it's through the Department of Energy or the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, FERC, that does licensing of major projects in the United States of America. But clearly, energy is so important, and our ability to produce and distribute energy here in the United States is something that we should be protecting and celebrating. Energy is foundational to our national security, our competitiveness. It's foundational to our way of life. So it's important that we do not put up barriers and throw roadblocks around producing reliable energy, whether you think about hydropower electricity or nuclear or natural gas, coal, the kind of energy that keeps the lights on.
So thank you for that. You know, Congress is responsible as an oversight of the agencies, and you've mentioned a few of the agencies here, FERC, the Department of Energy. So what's involved? How does Congress has an oversight on these agencies, and then what's their mandate? How do we control them?
Yes. Well, take the House Energy and Commerce Committee, and I serve as the lead Republican. On the House Energy and Commerce Committee, we are debating policy. We're debating the laws themselves, the bills, and what the policy is going to be, what the law is going to be. But we also have a very important oversight role. And there's a subcommittee on energy and commerce that is the Oversight Committee. And that is where we, as the legislative branch, have a responsibility to have oversight of the agencies within the executive branch. So when it comes to energy, just last week, for example, we sent a letter to the Energy Secretary, Granholm, asking what is her department doing? We're headed into winter. We see rising energy costs. Gas prices have reached a record high, over $1 just since the beginning of the year. We see disruptions in supply that are threatening brownouts and blackouts as we're heading into winter. And yet, you know, the focus is on the policies around the Green New Deal and the climate summit that's taking place in Glasgow. No. So we sent a letter to the secretary asking her what is she doing to address the energy crisis here at home. That's an example of oversight, because as a committee, as the Republicans, especially on the committee, we're very concerned that the Biden administration has implemented policies that are creating an energy crisis. One of the very first executive orders on day one that President Biden signed was to cancel the Keystone Pipeline. And then it wasn't too long after that, weeks after that, he said okay to a pipeline that Russia's building, Putin's building for Germany. And that didn't make much sense to me. And then in addition, as gas prices are going up in the United States of America because supply is being tapped down here and permits the exploration development on federal lands, for example, is being prohibited, the Biden administration has reached out to OPEC and asked them to increase production to address gas prices in the United States. So the committee has an oversight role where we ask the agency questions, we ask the administration questions. We want to be holding them accountable for the decisions that they are making that are impacting the reliability and the affordability of energy here in the United States.
Well, thank you for that answer. And that kind of leads me to my next question is to how do you Congress and the committee actually balance, and you touched on that a little bit, national security, economic stability, reliability, and demands for renewable and greener energy and innovation.
Yes.
How do you look at it and balance it? Which one is there one that has more weight and then another?
Well, we need to take it all into consideration. Energy plays a very important role when it comes to national security. It's part of our economic competitiveness. We are transitioning to a clean energy future. And so we are working through this transition right now. I am concerned about the rush to renewables that's being promoted by the Biden administration, because I think that we need to keep reliability and affordability at the forefront as we make this transition to clean energy solutions. And I don't think that that we should be promoting wind and solar at the exclusion of other energy in the United States of America. And I mentioned hydropower and nuclear. The United States of America is leading on the research around advanced nuclear reactors, for example, the next generation of nuclear reactors that would address some of the safety concerns, be able to use the waste fuel, recycle the waste fuel. It would be the next generation of advanced nuclear reactors developed with right here in the United States, new technology. And you think about how that could help meet our energy needs, not just here, but we could export that technology around the world. That's the kind of innovation that we should be promoting. We are leading the world in carbon capture. And right now the administration is saying they're capping natural gas, but we can capture the carbon. We are leading in carbon sequestration technology. And so I'm concerned about picking winners and losers. I believe that we should be embracing innovation, embracing this new technology, but not picking renewables, wind and solar specifically, at the expense of all of these other energy sources and jeopardizing reliable and affordable energy in the United States. And when it comes to reducing carbon emissions, because the rush to green and especially the focus on wind and solar is largely driven by this desire for a reduction in carbon emissions, I want to highlight that the United States of America is leading in bringing down carbon emissions through technology and innovation. And that's the free market at work. People taking their ideas as to new technology in the energy sector that can help bring down carbon emissions. And we should be embracing that across the board.
My question also around energy, we're watching the news and looking at the energy challenges that are unfolding in Europe, the rising prices, the scrambling to actually have supplies. What else is Congress doing to ensure that this doesn't happen in the US, that we run out of supply and we see really a real increase in issues with supply?
Well, one thing is that we should not be following Europe's lead, Europe's pie in the sky mandates, more government control, the rush to renewables. We should not be following that example. They've embraced the Green New Deal approach, and now it's leading to an energy crisis in Europe. You see in Europe where their gas prices have gone up 600% so far this year, 600%. And that's not the future that I want in the United States of America. So that's where we are leading on solutions that will promote new technology, innovation, an all of the above approach to energy here in the United States. And we need to look at updating our permitting processes, the environmental reviews that are required. Not too long ago, even I met with Amazon, and they were saying that they wanted to build more solar farms in the United States, but it takes 3 years to permit a solar farm. That's across the board. We need to update our environmental reviews laws so they don't take so long. We need to look at licensing reform. We need to be addressing some of the barriers to exporting natural gas. We need to promote the development of these new technologies that I was talking about. But when you see an administration following the lead in Europe or going all in on wind and solar, that's really making us dangerously dependent upon China. And the Department of Energy was created in the late 70s to reduce our dependence on Middle Eastern oil. That was the goal. And decades later, we finally became energy independent. And now we are shifting to this policy around the Green New Deal and wind and solar that's going to make us dangerously dependent upon China. I'm very concerned about China controlling the renewable supply chains currently, whether it is the silicon wafers, the rare earth minerals that are produced in China. China companies account for 80% of the raw materials for advanced batteries. 61% of lithium is refined in China. They are controlling these supply chains, and moving in a direction that makes us dependent upon China is dangerous to both national security and our economy.
The topic of the summit is really this nexus of water and energy. And I was wondering, if you have a perspective around the role of Congress as it relates to water, its conservation, quality, but also water is essential for the production of energy for some energy sources. And also, we need reliable and affordable energy and power in order to treat water, distribute it, store it, and ensure that we have an abundance of water available. So I was wondering if you have a perspective on that, and if you could explain maybe the role of Congress in that scope, because there's not a Department of Water per se.
That's true. The Clean Drinking Water Act was passed in the early 70s. EPA gets involved in clean drinking water standards, but you're talking beyond and broader. When I think about water infrastructure, it's really been bipartisan up until recent years. But I would even this Congress, we have worked on the committee. Republicans and Democrats have worked together to support clean drinking water infrastructure, some of the funding for these projects that are so important to communities around the country. So that's where Congress gets involved. We have been authorizing funding for building more infrastructure projects, water projects. There's growing concerns about potential cyber attacks on public water systems, and making sure that we are taking steps to protect those water systems. You mentioned the role that water can play with energy. I come from Washington State, and 70% of our electricity is hydroelectricity. Hydropower is a renewable source of energy. It's actually the largest source of renewable energy in the United States of America. And we could double hydroelectricity in America without even building a new dam. Only 3% of the dams produce hydroelectricity. And so we have infrastructure that, with some investment, we could expand hydroelectricity, create jobs, and produce more clean, renewable, reliable, affordable electricity. We need to address the licensing, though, of those projects. It takes, in the United States of America, 10 years on average to license a hydroelectric project versus 18 months for a natural gas facility. So those are some of the issues that we would address within a committee like Energy and Commerce. I've introduced legislation to streamline the licensing for hydroelectric projects. And it's passed out of committee, it's passed the House, but it still hasn't been signed into law. And so that's an example of a bill that I continue to work on.
My last question is, there's a current infrastructure bill that's being negotiated and on the table. Share your perspective on its impact on the energy sector and water infrastructure to some extent.
Yes, there was an infrastructure bill that passed the Senate. It's currently under consideration in the House. I do have concerns about the bill that passed the Senate, and unfortunately in the House it's being linked to the reconciliation package. But this infrastructure package missed an opportunity to really look at permitting reforms that I think are so important for energy projects in the United States of America. It's just taking too long in bureaucratic red tape. We need cut the red tape and roll out the red carpet and get more projects permitted here in the United States. So, we really need to speed up the process for both energy and water infrastructure and make sure that these projects are getting done to keep prices low. And we have very high environmental standards. We can do it. We can do it quicker and still meet those standards. I also felt like that much of the Senate infrastructure bill was a down payment on the Green New Deal. It was setting up a lot of the policies and programs that are being promoted through the Green New Deal. It picks the winners and losers for who will run the transition lines for wind and solar power from state to state, even if it's not wanted by that area. I'm concerned about the promotion of weather-dependent renewables, wind and solar, versus and shutting down American energy, natural gas, shutting down the natural gas. The natural gas tax is actually in the reconciliation package. But when we move in that direction, we're only becoming more dependent upon China. That is dangerous to us. And so I have a lot of concerns about it creating more programs, more spending without really addressing affordability, reliability of energy in the United States of America, and addressing the permitting reforms that we are in desperate need of to make sure that we can continue to produce the energy to meet our needs. And when you go to turn on the lights, make sure that the lights actually come on. We have this high expectation as Americans that it's actually all going to work.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you, Catherine McMorris Rodgers, for joining us today. And, the Policy Circle, our mission is really to inform women so they can take ownership of solutions in their communities. And I think it's really great to understand the federal perspective and then how it translates or trickles down to the state and even to the community, because at the end of the day, those projects and those innovations and the implementation and delivery of energy happens locally in the communities. And our goal is really to equip people so they can engage in those discussions with their representatives at every level of government. So thank you so much for taking the time to share with us your perspective. And I think it's really enlightening, and it just helps us to expand our mind and understanding of how every layers of government functions together and sometimes not so much together. So thank you again for your time. Really appreciate it.
Great to be with you, Sylvie. Thanks for having me.